Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Aging Less, the Longevity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Marie Stella, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today, we are going to be exploring the topic of intermittent fasting with certified wellness coach Laurie Lewis, here to explain all the details. Fasting might seem like an intimidating word to some people. Perhaps you are more likely to have heard it in the context of religion, high-performance athletes, or even weight loss. But today we're going to be exploring the overall health benefits of intermittent fasting and how it could give you more energy throughout the day. So joining us is wellness coach Laurie Lewis, who shows us how it's possible to take exceptional care of ourselves while dealing with life's complicated and fast-paced circumstances. With intermittent fasting as the foundation, Laurie offers a chance to break free from the punishment paradigm of diet mindset and diet culture. Laurie guides us to tune into the body's inner compass and experience improvements in every aspect of our lives. So welcome, Laurie. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be with you.
So for our audience that doesn't know you, Laurie was actually previously a retail consultant and branding expert before completely changing her career. So what made you change your career in your mid-50s?
Well, I'll go back to age 29. I promise this won't be too long, though. And I suddenly had a thought in my late 20s, which went something like, I think this Diet Coke might not be good for me. And I was an athlete and a hard worker, and I really was enjoying my career. But there was something, I was constantly in a fog. I don't know how else to describe it. And in that conversation with myself, I decided to cut out all fruity flavored, chemically drinks and like grocery store juice. And then I hit on the next category of food, which was maybe this cereal and crackers and so forth aren't so good for me. And then I had the thought, maybe I won't eat dessert anymore, which just sounds crazy. It's like, maybe I could just decide I don't like that. And I'm like, but I do like it. Who doesn't like it, right? And so what happened at that point in my late 20s is I developed a passion for nutrition and fueling myself well. I never wanted to be the food police. And so that was a decade and a half of studying food and improving my athletic performance and so forth. So then I was in my mid 40s running marathons and eating well and having optimal health. And suddenly menopause, perimenopause, which are the transition years, pushed me down a dark, bleak hole. So for 10 years, I really suffered and struggled. All the 100 symptoms of perimenopause, I pretty much checked all the boxes. And then when my period stopped and I went into menopause, I suddenly gained 50 pounds. So that didn't feel good physically or emotionally. And then like I said, I had all the other symptoms like brain fog and forgetfulness, and my equilibrium was off and every joint in my body hurt. And after lots of experimentation and trying to feel better, I found out one night about intermittent fasting. I stayed up all night studying it and I thought, I'm going to try this. I tried everything. Of course, I'm going to try this. And immediately within 3 days, I felt like myself again. So I hadn't lost a pound, but the mental clarity, I remember feeling grounded and back in my body. It's hard to describe. What does it feel like to not feel like yourself? I think a lot of people out there know what that feels like. But then to restore yourself again was exhilarating. And so it was a slow process. It took 15 months to lose 51 pounds. And then I was at a wedding in early October of 2018, and I was cornered by a group of very curious and enthusiastic friends who would not let me off the hook until I agreed to create a class and lead them. And I said, okay, then we're starting immediately. And they said, we can't go on a diet over, the Christmas, Thanksgiving, the Christmas holidays, which here in the US is late November to, through New Year's. And I said, you know what? I'm going to prove to all of you that you can fast and keep an eating window. That's your choice. And you won't gain weight through the holidays. In fact, you might even lose a little if you're lucky. And we can start January never having to go on a diet again. And with that first class, which was very successful, I'm now 7 years into my coaching business. And I honestly have to say, every day is a joy. Every minute of it, I love. So I lead group programs. I coach people one-on-one. I love talking on podcasts, answering all your questions. So imagining thousands of people out there whose lives could be changed from this conversation.
Wow, that's really inspiring, actually. That's amazing that, so late in your life, you're able to turn around into a career that's so fulfilling for you. And it sounds like you've got some very supportive friends as well. So that's really fun to hear about too. They sound amazing. So what would you say, just to dive into our topic for a little bit before we get to know you better, what would you say is the most common misconception about intermittent fasting?
That it's hard. Okay,
Mm.
so people hear fasting and they think I couldn't go a minute without a fruity drink or a bite of something, an hour at the most. Some people actually have good habits out there, which would look like having a meal and then pausing and not having any more food, and then having another meal. But that's rare in our society today. And so people imagine that it must be a great struggle and be very hard. And the actual truth is that once you adjust and flip, what we call flip the metabolic switch from being a sugar burner to being a fat burner, we all have plenty of body fat on us right now. And what it's there for is to use as fuel. So when our body is naturally remembering that the fat is there and tapping into it, we have a bright, clean, focused energy that feels like it's stable, like a nice, stable energy, as opposed to the blood sugar roller coaster. And so, yeah, the biggest misconception is that it's hard.
Wow. That is really interesting. I think probably the word fasting throws some people off and makes you think that that would be really quite the struggle, as you say. But that's good to know that, you can be coached through it and flip that switch, as you say, and it's actually not as much of a struggle. Um, all right. So before we dive into more details about this, we wanted to get to know you a little bit better. So what do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, it's crazy. You would think I'm 62 and you would think I would be taking more and more time off. But one of the best things is because I coach people around the world, I can work from anywhere. So right now I'm home in Portland, Oregon, but I love going to Baja in Mexico and Mexico City and Costa Rica and Italy and London and New York. So wherever I am, I schedule one-on-one coaching calls with my clients and also lead my group programs. And so I spend my time. I- Um, you would think I would have all sorts of other interests at this point in my life, but my days are very simple. I wake up, I exercise in a fasted state. I then, clean out my emails and prepare for the day, and then work with clients all day long. And then I look forward to having my dinner. I make dinner. I eat my dinner, maybe I take a walk, read a book, and go to bed. That's my whole life. So
Hmm.
I do spend a lot of time staying on top of the latest research, and the books that I read tend to be in the area of health and menopause and maintaining a positive mindset. And so I'm kind of in a very happy, simple zone. And people ask, aren't I retiring? And I think I'm retiring no time soon because I'm loving my life and I love the people that I get to support.
That's really great. That's a wonderful answer. So you mentioned reading there. Is there a book or a movie that you've enjoyed recently?
Oh, I loved the movie Amelia Perez. I think it just won some Academy Awards.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it, my niece told me to see it, and she made me promise that I wouldn't read or listen to anything that it was about before I watched it. So I came in clean, blind, like I don't know what this movie is about, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I really,
Wow.
really enjoyed it. And then, um, oh my gosh, I just read a friend's memoir. I had read an advanced copy of it. It's called Leaving Cleveland. And to have an intimate picture into a friend's life was really special to read her book. So that's
Yeah.
probably the latest book I read 2 days ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's great. Good recommendation as well for everybody else listening out there. Um, Speaking of listening, are you listening to any podcasts at the moment? Are you an avid podcaster at all?
I am every day. People send me, thank goodness. I love it when people say, have you heard this one yet? And so I
Mm,
woke up this morning to a Huberman podcast. For me, what's discouraging about his podcasts it's 3 hours long. So I responded to my friend, are you kidding me? Who has 3 hours to listen to these people
yeah.
talk? And I really prefer a shorter one. I was on one recently, and the host said, I keep this to what a person's commute might be. So if you get in your car at home and you
Ah,
arrive at work, and hopefully you've heard the whole thing. Um, but this Huberman podcast, which I probably will listen to this evening, is about the microbiome in our mouth, and that this particular dental health expert was saying that we need to pause from eating so much because it's causing the mineralization in our teeth to fail. Okay, that's the recap that I got from my friend.
okay.
But that's very exciting to think that someone in the world of dental health, and then I apply it anecdotally to myself in the last 8 years since I've been intermittent fasting. I call it having an eating window.
Yeah.
My dental health has improved immeasurably. Like my gums normalized. I have no tartar or plaque. My dentist is astonished. And after the first 2 years of my intermittent fasting, she was like, I've got to start that and to start telling
Yeah.
my patients to be keeping an eating window. And so now I'll listen tonight to that Huberman thing.
Wow. That's really interesting. It obviously ties into so many different parts of the body. So hopefully we can learn a bit more about that as well. My next question for you is, do you have a role model, or is there somebody who's inspired you?
Well, really have enjoyed a friendship and a working relationship with Jen Stevens, who wrote her first book. It was self-published, called Delay, Don't Deny. A wonderful, well-written, it's like having a conversation with a funny, smart friend about her diet history and how she learned about and started intermittent fasting and then stopped and then started and stopped. And she's done every possible diet. And she and I have been connected now for over 7 years. And she then wrote a New York Times bestselling book called Fast, Feast, Repeat. And I look up to her very much. What the thing that I love most about Jen, in addition to her commitment to people and her intelligence and her ability to do really sound research, is that I think she's really true to herself. And I admire people who I feel are honest and authentic and respect their own boundaries. And yeah, she's really been a role model for me and so many thousands and thousands of people.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really fascinating. And maybe our listeners will be interested in that book as well. We're getting lots of recommendations today. I'm enjoying this. Next, I wanted to ask if there's a course or a class that you've taken, or maybe even that you've taught, that has inspired you.
Oh, every class I teach inspires me. I've led now my holiday program for the 7th year. And so we take people, as I say, from excuse me, from Halloween candy or Halloween treats through New Year's bubbly and beyond. And that's inspiring. I also am a repeat student at a place in Baja, Mexico, called the Modern Elder Academy. And so they shorten that to MEA.
Hmm.
And a former Airbnb executive Chip Conley started MEA, the Modern Elder Academy. And it is such an inspiring, beautiful place to go to relax and eat really good food with like minded, enthusiastic, committed people. But this conversation about how can we keep expanding and contributing as we age instead of getting smaller and smaller, how to really fully engage in life up until the end and stay healthy and connected. And so Chip Conley has this incredible campus in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and
Mm,
Baja, Mexico, MEA, that I love. Highly recommend.
amazing. Cool. That's really cool to hear about. So we're going to dive in now to our more detailed questions. So for starters, let's get some definitions under our belt. How would you define longevity?
Oh, well, technically, longevity is how long you actually live, how long your body is alive. I would add the dimension of health span to lifespan. And what I'm really interested in for myself and others is that we stay healthful and vibrantly alive right up until the end. And that rather than what's happening now is a 10 to 15-year precipitous decline from when people start getting really sick until when they expire,
Yeah.
that we stay fully, vibrantly alive right up until maybe the final 6 years, 6 or 12 months. And health span is really
Mm,
important. The quality of our life and our mobility and clarity. And I'm, I think that's my definition of longevity.
yeah. And I think there's a lot of tools these days that really help people to maintain a good quality of life, even as their body might be declining. So that's really interesting for you to touch on. I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to seeing people, older people in their lives, have maybe that health decline or maybe even a mental one, and feeling like, what can I do to improve this quality of life? Do you know what I mean?
I
So,
do, absolutely. And
yeah.
one thing that comes to mind is Peter Attia's book, Outlive, has a chapter called the Centenarian Decathlon. And I hope I'm remembering it correctly. It's if we want to live to 100 and we say there are things I want to be able to do physically when I'm 100, then we have to be able to do 10 times that now. So if you want to carry 2 bags of groceries around the, corner, for a half a block, then right now you got to carry 10 times that much weight for 10 times that distance. And so the things we want to do, like sitting and standing and taking the lid off a jar that we think right now are so easy, we
Yeah.
need to be preparing ourselves and look at what we're capable of now. And it's got to be about 10 times what we're interested in doing much
Mm.
later on. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
fascinating. Sounds like I need to get better at opening jars as well because I'm pretty hopeless, to be honest.
Well, see, it's good to notice, right?
Yeah.
Yes, grip strength is one of the hallmarks
Yeah,
of longevity and aging. So,
that's
and being able
true.
to hang, if you can just, people think, where am I going to hang myself from? Well, get a bar and hang and count that. There are all sorts of tests you can find on the internet
Mm,
about the things that you can and can't do now that are pointing to what your future challenges will be. So, get
interesting.
on that, people.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
of the grip test one before. So we're going to move on now to your area of expertise. How would you define intermittent fasting?
I think it's a timed eating. So, in the medical world, intermittent fasting covers what we call time restricted eating or time restricted feeding and alternate day fasting. So, keeping a schedule where you take the 24 hours in a day or even 2 days, 48-hour period, and dividing that time into 2 parts, the fasting hours and the eating window. And so, a time restricted eating approach would be eating every day in an eating window, and an alternate day fasting approach would be having a full fasting day and then an eating day, and you alternate. And so in the medical world, that's what intermittent fasting is. There's long-term therapeutic fasting, which is much longer fasting where people can cure many diseases from water fasting. Then there can be sometimes people set out to do a 60 or a 72-hour fast. That 72-hour fast can, start making new stem cells and have a impressive effect on our gut microbiome. But intermittent fasting, I just like to, it's a timed eating. Every day has two parts, the eating window and the fasting hours, and you get to say what that breakdown is.
That's really interesting. So, most people are probably aware of intermittent fasting as an approach to weight loss. What would you say is the relationship between intermittent fasting and longevity?
Yeah. So when we are taking very simple steps to match our own physiology, eating nutritious food, sleeping well, hydrating, keeping our magnesium up, and having a timing for our eating. When we're doing those things that match our physiology, the body has less resistance, it's less deterioration. And unfortunately or fortunately, we think that we live in abundant times, but that abundance is to our detriment in many regards, and definitely regarding our health. And there's
Mm.
so much. I'm sure everybody out there is like, I don't even know what to eat. One place says this, one place says that. It's so confusing. This expert contradicts that expert. And with intermittent fasting, we actually get the opportunity to tune in to the inner compass of our own body. It starts being able to communicate with us, and we start to have a reverence for, a beautiful honoring, a relationship with our body, and it starts steering us in the direction of sleep more, hydrate more, move more, choose nutritious food. And all of that starts with this foundation of having an eating window. So fasting, I say fasting first. Do one thing at a time. Teach yourself how to keep an eating window. And then pretty soon your body will say, we don't like some of it'll lose interest in some of those unhealthy foods that you've been enjoying. I know that's hard to believe. And then it will start steering you towards the foods that are giving it the incredible nutrition that it needs. So intermittent fasting absolutely contributes to longevity because it's a foundation of how we can work with our
Wow,
body instead of against it.
that's really interesting. So, what would you say are the core aspects of intermittent fasting?
The core aspects,
Hmm.
I would say for me and my coaching with people, thousands of people over all these years, is that I want people to keep it simple. So again, we live in a time with a lot of confusion and noise and stress. We live in what I call this punishment paradigm, which is we're trying so hard to be perfect. We're only listening to external authorities. We're trying so hard to be good and avoid being bad. And that if we can stick to this very simple regimen of their quieting the noise, I always say intermittent fasting, it's not a diet, it's a quiet because the mind gets very peaceful. Decision fatigue goes away. When you're burning body fat, it actually gets quiet and still. You can go about your life and do the things that you enjoy without distraction and without cravings. And so to keep it simple, I think is the most important aspect of intermittent fasting. I think there's not necessarily a right way to do it. One, you want to make sure you're actually fasting. So in our society, people want to cut corners and figure out all the things like, what am I allowed to have when I'm fasting? If you think about that, that's kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
Because fasting means an abstinence from sweetness and food flavors and nutrients. We want to completely abstain from anything that would cause the digestive process to start up and the hormones to respond. So fasting, actual fasting, is plain unflavored water, plain unflavored black coffee, plain unflavored bitter black or green tea, because the bitter coffee and the bitter tea don't start the digestive process or cause a response in insulin and so forth. So you keep your fasting hours super plain and simple. And then the beauty of it, like Jen Stevens' first book, delay, don't deny. You just say to yourself, I figured out the eating window that has me feel my best. And I'm happy to help people with that. But if you figured out the eating window that has you feel your best, I just get to eat the delicious foods and flavors and fruity drinks and so forth later in my eating window. So it's the best of everything. So I would say my top coaching is to actually make sure you're fasting and to keep it very simple and be motivated by feeling good as opposed to perfectionism.
Yeah. That's so important. I feel like people really have that attitude towards a lot of things. If it makes them feel good, it just motivates you more and more to do it properly and to keep it up. Yeah.
It does, and you said that really well. It seems kind of obvious, right? If I feel
Right.
good, I will keep doing what feels good, okay? So, we all know that dieting is hard and it doesn't feel good. That deprivation, eating little, tiny, unsatisfying meals every 2 hours, that we feel good when we eat and fill ourselves up, and then our body goes, "Ah, that was delicious." Okay? So that feels good. And then not having to count calories and count all the nutrients and measure and track. You put food on a plate and you don't have to do any math, you know. The only thing
Mm,
you're tracking is the time. And the reason we have to track the time is because ancient humans, for all of human history, they weren't eating all the time because food was scarce. Well, now that food's abundant, we need to use the clock as a control, if you will,
yeah.
but if you discover the eating window that has you feel your best, as you said, people will keep doing what feels good. We prioritize. The more you do this, you really prioritize feeling well. So one of the hard things for people is, what do I do about social events or travel, or so and so always wants me to have breakfast with them.
Yeah.
Well, when we've practiced this and we prioritize feeling amazing, you would
Yeah.
then naturally say to your friend, let's start having lunch.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to have breakfast with you, but I feel much better when I just drink a black coffee or plain water in the morning. I realize I don't feel my best when I eat outside my eating window. So I'm just going to keep my eating window because feeling really well is my priority from
Yeah.
now until forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, my next question for you is, who would intermittent fasting be most suitable for?
Human beings over the age of
Mm-hmm.
19, okay, who aren't pregnant and aren't breastfeeding. Even people who are type 1 diabetic, which means their pancreas is not making insulin. If they work closely with their doctor and are tracking their blood sugar and are monitoring their carbohydrates and so forth, which they normally do, they will having a daily eating window and intermittent fasting will even help a type 1 diabetic manage their insulin control, and they will
Mm,
not need to take as much insulin, which is very exciting. So, all people, whether they have 5% body fat and are an elite athlete, or you're a 65-year-old menopausal sedentary person, or you're a person with type 2 diabetes, or fatty liver disease, or GERD, or any autoimmune disease, whatever, high blood pressure is one of the first things that when you start keeping an eating window, blood pressure normalizes for most people quite rapidly. Anybody with an inflammatory disease or discomfort, aching joints. So I'll go back to what I said about someone with low body fat and who might be an elite athlete. Even elite competitive athletes are discovering that training in a fasted state improves their performance. And so someone who doesn't have any body fat to lose per se can still benefit from being mindful about keeping a 12-12 schedule. So you take the 24 hours in a day. Let's say they stopped eating at 7 p.m. and then they drink plain water, go to sleep, wake up, drink plain water, have a black coffee or a black tea, take some magnesium, and then 12 hours after they close their eating window, they open their eating window and they could do their fitness regime or have breakfast or a protein shake. Um, the length or the timing of the eating window has to have, I think, three components to have it be successful. So it's kind of like a three-legged stool. This is how you figure out your favorite eating window. It's got to feel really, really good. You want to feel great, good energy. Like, I can't wait for my eating window, but I feel so well during these fasting hours. So it's got to feel good. the next thing to check off is it's got to work with your life, your fitness, your commute, your social life, your family, people, it's got to work with you, the timing of your daily life. And then the third element is it's got to help you reach and maintain your health goals. So it might fit two of those. Someone might be losing a lot of weight, let's say, or they've turned their A1C around. They're no longer type 2 diabetic. They feel really well, but it doesn't, the schedule that's working for their, doesn't quite work for the schedule of their life. So then we've got to move it around. Some people love a morning eating window. Some people work night shifts. So so it's got to feel amazing. It's got to work
Yeah.
with your life, and it's got to help you reach and maintain. Most diets, people hit the mark and go back to all the habits that got them sick and overweight in the first place. And dieting has this stopping and starting and doing it and not doing it and reach the target and go back to what I did before. This feels so well that people want to keep doing it. One of the questions people ask me is, I remember the first person who asked me this question. She said, "What are you going to do when you reach your goal?" I was having lunch with a friend. And I was like, oh, I was 4 months into my intermittent fasting regimen. And I thought, what am I going to do? In the past, you reach the target and you just go back to life as normal, but life as it was before. And I thought, well, I feel really well. So why would I stop doing something that feels this good? And I said, I'll decide when I get there, when my clothes fit again and I reach the weight that I was before and I feel fit and strong. I'll decide then if I'm going to adjust anything at all. And, now it's pretty rare to be 62 years old in menopause, having lost a considerable amount of weight and then keep it off for 6.5 years. So that's why I have an eating window every day, because I'm actually in optimal health. My
Yeah.
biological age is 40 and I feel really good. So that's
That's
why,
amazing.
yeah.
That's really inspiring stuff to hear as well, that this is,
Thank you.
you feel really good. So why would you stop? That's such a weird thing about diet culture as well, I feel like. So my next question for you is, in what ways does keeping this eating window affect cognitive function and productivity during the work hours?
Well, there's this amazing little thing called a ketone. And what happens is when we flip that metabolic switch, the body starts releasing fat out of our fat cells. It goes through the liver and it is then transformed into what's called a ketone body that then navigates through the blood brain barrier and makes us cognitively sharper. And it affects every cell in our bodies, the mitochondria, the little engines in every single cell is working optimally. Another aspect of keeping an eating window and fasting is that there's a process called autophagy, which means self-cleaning or self-eating. And when we are in a fasted state, around the 17, 18-hour mark, autophagy cranks up. I mean, exponentially shoots up. And that is the body's ability when we're in a fasted state to go in and clean house. It uses up old junky proteins that are just in the cells dormant and upcycles and recycles and cleans up and puts the cell back together so that even scientists looking in a microscope at a brand new cell and a cell that's been refurbished through autophagy, they can't discern the difference between the new cell and the upcycled cell. So the brain function also is a matter of inflammation. And one of the first things that gets affected when we fast, clean, and keep an eating window is the inflammation comes down, which then also causes our immune system to be stronger. So we are definitely sharper and brighter. Imagine it this way in terms of evolution. If human beings got lethargic and didn't have any keen focus when we were hungry, we would not have survived to go find food. So all these years of evolution have caused us to be bright and sharp and focused and productive when we're in a fasted state. And everybody who's a consistent intermittent faster reports that.
Mm. Interesting. So, what can individuals do to manage their hunger and their energy levels while they're fasting, especially if they have, a busy work life?
Oh, I love it. Okay. So once you become, as I call fat adapted, once you have flipped that metabolic switch and are using your own body fat for energy, you can work out in a fasted state. You can lead meetings in a fasted state. Most people think, oh, I'm going into a big meeting, so I have to eat something. Intermittent fasters are like, I'm going into a big meeting and I'm staying fasted. And so then you think, well, when does that fat add up? When does that a switch get flipped? That's in about the 3 to 4 week mark. So most people feel like, oh, that first month, I'm really going to be suffering. It is an adjustment. And so this first month, the first 4 weeks, takes some determination and some focus. And what it takes mostly is being gentle and steady and gradual. Okay. So you want to keep in mind that what we're trying to do is stabilize our blood sugar, keep insulin low, take enough magnesium and maybe a little salt under your tongue, drink lots of water, stay busy. But if you are first starting with, as I mentioned a minute ago, this idea of 12-12, okay? So if you stopped eating, like, okay, when do you think you're going to stop eating your dinner today, Sarah?
Probably at 8,
Okay,
maybe.
8. Great. Now people will normally say, "Is that an okay time?" It's like, what? It's whatever you do. Like some people stop eating at 4, some people stop eating at midnight. Whatever time you say. Okay. So then if you stopped eating tonight at 8, you would then drink plain water, go to sleep when you go to sleep, wake up tomorrow, drink plain water. If you like coffee or tea, have a tea or a coffee with nothing in it. And then 12 hours later, 8 a.m., you eat your breakfast normally. Eat normally. This is not a diet where the intermittent fasting expert tells you what to eat. What will happen is your own body will start eventually to guide you in that regard. And
Mm.
so we address the food quality once you've become accustomed to having a fasting schedule and an eating window. And so starting gradually is really important. So I'm thinking about your question, which is how do we make it easier and eliminate as much struggle and suffering as possible? Keep it very simple. Start gradually. If you hit that 12-hour mark, let's say 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., or if someone stops at 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., if you hit that 12-hour mark and you're not hungry, wait. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
at that point, the goal is to gradually increase the fasting hours and gradually shrink the eating window. And I think pretty quickly, most people can get to 2 meals in a 7 or 8 hour eating window. So for you, that would be one to
Wow.
eight, or someone else would be 10 to 5 or 10 to 6. And so you're gradually going 12, 12, 14, 10, 15, 9, 16, 8. So when you hear in intermittent fasting world, when you hear these numbers, that's what that means. Those all add up to 24. And if you can focus maybe less on the time, if you're like, that seems so constraining. Some people just like to focus on, I eat 2 meals. Some people will say, I don't eat before noon. I don't eat past 7. And I eat 2 meals. And you eat a meal and you go about your life. You pause, you drink plain water, and you eat another meal. That is an amazing way to live. And so, what a person can expect in that first month, I strongly recommend if someone is starting this for weight loss, that you do not get on the scale for the first month. It's like, put it away because human nature is like, is it working? Is it working? Is it working? You keep getting on that scale, making yourself crazy. Okay. So honor the fact that your body is going through a huge adjustment in the first month. You're going from being a sugar burner to being a fat burner. And you want to honor that transition and be working with your body and be focusing on feeling really well as opposed to, is it working? Is it working? By, gauging on the scale. You can count on it 100% that it's working. It's lowering your inflammation. It's normalizing your blood pressure. It's boosting your immune system. It's making your gut happy. Your liver
Mm.
doesn't have to work as hard. Your brain is sharper. So if you can stay motivated, but in that first 3 to 4 weeks, and drink plenty of water, maybe put a little salt under your tongue, maybe have a magnesium, stay busy. You will make it through and you will feel very proud of yourself. And as I said, remember, I felt better in 3 days. I
Yeah.
felt clear and sharp and in my body and had the feeling like, oh, there I am.
Mm,
So
yeah.
it's
Wow.
I really applaud people, one, who want to start, who don't treat it like a diet, like I have to wait till Monday. Everybody can say, well, okay, she said, what time am I stopping eating today? I guess I'm starting today. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
And then going 12 hours and increasing it. And if you can stay steady and gentle and honor your body in that first month, you will keep going because you'll keep
Wow.
feeling better. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, let's take an example then. As you were saying, you had asked me like when do I stop eating at night? If you were to use me as an example, how would you tell me to start this journey?
I would say keep it really simple. Tune into your inner compass. Learn to trust yourself and trust your body. We have given all of our power away to authorities. And you could think, well, Laurie Lewis, you're an authority. Okay, but I'm turning the power back to you. I'm turning the power back to you and your body that you can trust it. You can tune in to its inner intelligence. And the North Star is how well do I feel? So I would say, decide when you're closing your eating window. If you're someone who's a late night snacker, you might have to change your evening habits. You might have to sit in a different chair. You might have to take a walk. You might have to go in your bedroom and lock the door and not come out. I don't care. Right? Okay.
Yep.
So changing habits is really hard for human beings. We all know that. And if you have a big calendar in front of you and you're like day 1, day 2, and you keep track of how long you fasted or how long your eating window was. So then the second step is to make sure you're actually fasting, which is plain unflavored water. I say of any temperature or any sparkliness. So you can have sparkling water, you can have it cold, you can have it hot, you can have it in a hot piping mug, your favorite mug, plain unflavored water. Nothing in it. People.
Yeah.
Okay, then plain unflavored black coffee or plain unflavored bitter black or green tea, minerals like a plain magnesium, a little salt under your tongue can perk you right up. And then, oh, of course, your medications as prescribed. Okay. So people are like, will my medication break a fast? No, take them as your pharmacist recommends. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you hit that 12-hour mark. You ask yourself, am I hungry? If you're like, I'm not hungry, then you've got to look at your schedule for the day and make it work. Like, well, if I keep fasting until I get hungry, what do I have going on this morning? Like, what time will I eat? And then such an important aspect is to always have on hand and prepare for the nutritious food, the delicious food that you love for when you open your eating window. Because in the beginning, people are like, "Oh, I fasted so long. I'm so proud of myself and so hungry." And you stand in front of the fridge and you're just shoving things in. Okay? So I want you to
Yeah.
hear my voice saying, "Wait, wait, wait, wait. Put it on a plate. You could take a minute, put it in a bowl, put it on a plate, sit down. You deserve a break. Breathe, enjoy that food." And then I hope people will listen to this again because you'll need a reminder of everything I'm saying, but keep it
Yeah.
simple. Go 12-12, go a little longer, eat when you're hungry, slow down, put your food on a plate, eat your meal, savor it. And then the next question people have is, well, how do I know how much to eat? Okay, your body knows. So, what you're tuning into and practicing is this idea of satiety, which is that point when you're eating, when your body goes, ah. And mostly we don't notice it. Mostly we override it. Like your body said, I'm good. You could stop eating now. And we're like, you're like, this is delicious. And we keep eating until the plate is empty or keep eating until our emotions are soothed. But nutritious food is meant to provide what our body needs. And our body is actually telling us when it had enough. And so if you can tune into that feeling and communication from your body of satiety, feeling satisfied, then you're done. You clean up, you go about your day, you wait 3, 4, 5 hours till the next meal and repeat, have another meal. Close your eating window, fast, clean, wake up tomorrow, go a little longer. And then if you can settle in to, as I said, a 7 or an 8 hour eating window, 2 meals in 7 or 8 hours, within by the second week, I would say. Maybe before if you're not pushing it too hard and you feel good with that. What's driving you is feeling well, not perfectionism. Like, oh, my friend fasts 20 hours, so I have to also. No, you don't. Your body, remember, we're tuning in and trusting your body and trusting yourself, trusting what it's telling you, being really good to yourself. And so the secret here is being gentle and honoring your
Yeah.
body and trusting yourself, honoring our design.
Wow. That was really fascinating. And I hope everybody's learning so much from this that, like we said in the very beginning of the podcast, it's not a struggle. It doesn't have to be a struggle. And that you can get through that first month and it will absolutely be worth it. So that's fascinating to hear about as well. My next question for you, a little bit different. Is there any risks or considerations that people should be aware of before they start, creating for themselves a fasting period or an eating window?
Well, one, I would I would find a doctor who's supportive of this. There's plenty of medical research and evidence. We have a journal here called the New England Journal of Medicine that there was a huge um, compilation of research. It was in 2019 demonstrating to physicians that keeping an eating window and intermittent fasting is really important to turn around disease, cognitive performance as well as physical ailments and to keep us healthy. So you want to find a doctor who understands it and is supportive of that. And depending on your medication and your current health, you would want to say to them, I'm going to implement a daily fasting schedule and I'm going gently and I'm honoring my body's cues. I'm going to eat well in my eating window. You want to assure them that you're not just, going off a cliff. And again, gentle is the way. And you can feel very confident that you're normalizing your blood sugar, you're keeping insulin low, which then has all of our hormones. We have over 80 hormones. They're like little chemical messengers, and each one has their job. And by keeping a fasting schedule, we're enabling those hormones to do their job well. And I think one of the concerns people have is, doesn't that ruin your metabolism? I don't know how that started. I think people might not understand
Mm.
metabolic rate and what ruins our metabolism is dieting. So it's like, well, then what's the difference, right? So what happens is when we're fasting, actually fasting every day for the amount of time that feels good to you, and we flip that metabolic switch, we do that every day around that 12-hour mark. Okay, so we're a month in, and around that 12-hour mark now, every day forever, your body will switch into fat burning. Then it's got this great sustained energy, and we mostly have unlimited amount of fat on us. We'll never run out.
Yeah.
And so then, regarding the eating window, if you have an eating window that's long enough, so I think anywhere, depending on your fitness and your health, but most people, anywhere between 3 hour to 7 hour eating window every day, your body is communicating to you the amount of nutrients it needs. So if you give it enough time to communicate, I'm full now, I got enough, then you stop eating. Or I'm super hungry today, eat more. Then if you're honoring those satiety cues, the satiety cues are your body's way of saying, I got enough. So what metabolic rate is and metabolism is the body's perceiving how much available fuel there is. If it perceives not enough fuel, like with dieting, the metabolism slows down. The metabolic rate matches the amount of perceived fuel. But this dance between fasting and eating well, the body goes, oh, there's plenty of fuel. I'm getting enough nutrients that I need. I'm communicating to this human that I've got enough nutrients or I need more. And then during the fasting hours, to have access to all this body fat that it can tap into, then the metabolic rate goes up. So
Mm.
fasting actually increases your metabolism. So it's
Wow.
not appropriate for a pregnant woman or breastfeeding. I would talk to your doctor. It's absolutely the way to turn around fatty liver and type 2 diabetes and
Mm.
hypertension and keep our inflammation low. And even people with Hashimoto's and other autoimmune diseases can absolutely benefit from this. And I hope the theme that everybody goes, home with is be gentle, be actually fasting, choose an eating window that feels really good, and eat nutritious food to satiety and stop eating when your body says it's had enough. Because you
Yeah.
get to eat more tomorrow. You don't have to eat it all today.
Yeah, exactly. That's fascinating. And I just wanted to ask a more specific question. Is there any advice that you would give um, in creating an eating window for yourself, specifically to women, and particularly when it comes to hormonal health, as you mentioned?
Well, hormonal health, the thing that's bad for our hormones is pushing hard. And
Hmm.
one of the reasons that women really crash and have a great struggle through the later parts of perimenopause, which can be around 47, 48, 49 years old. We tend to go into menopause around an average 52 years old, but 47, 48, 49 can really be tough on a woman because all the pushing we've been doing for 20, 25 years catches up with us. Okay. So fast. And that's what happened to me. That's why my perimenopause was so difficult. And it wasn't because I wasn't a healthy eater. I was, thank goodness. But there were other areas where I was sleep deprived and pushing really hard. I lived in New York City at the time. I never ate dinner before 10 p.m. I was terrible. So- and so all that pushing hard is not good for our hormones. So, what is good for our hormones is starting with this most important hormone, insulin, and then a secondary hormone, cortisol, is that if we're going gently and regulating, our glucose control, which then is also intimately linked to insulin, once our insulin is lowered, and our glucose is working correctly and we're tapping into our body fat, then the next level of hormones are our hunger and satiety hormones start working correctly. So again, the theme here is going gently and having I when we think about is it working and what are we measuring and how do we know if we're improving, most people look at the scale. And what I like to encourage everyone to do is have your dashboard, like sitting in your car or sitting in a cockpit of an airplane. There are all these dials and so forth. And all those dials communicate something that's working or not working, something that we're measuring. But what I want you to envision is like this pink flashing neon sign over the dashboard that says, "How do I feel?" So that dashboard is driven by how do I feel? And then we have all the other things that we're measuring, like the scale and health biomarkers and so forth. And people will see their health improving. People will experience, like, oh, I used to have this shoulder pain. I don't have that anymore. I had debilitating plantar fasciitis. Like the bottoms of my feet hurt so much I could barely walk across the floor when I woke up in the morning.
Hmm.
After 3.5 months of intermittent fasting, all that pain, terrible pain, went away and never came back. I had frozen shoulder. I couldn't move my shoulders for about 5 years.
Mm.
My elbows hurt. My hips hurt. If I sat for 5 minutes, when I stood up, I would have to kind of get the kinks out of my hips.
Yeah.
None of this is in my body anymore.
Wow.
So, yeah, talk to your doctor, make
Yeah.
sure they're on board with it, and your hormonal health will actually improve, especially
Wow.
melatonin and cortisol and yeah, all of them.
Everything. Yeah, it's
Yep.
amazing to see how like just, you know, a relatively, I mean, it's a big change to start doing this for some people, but it seems like a relatively small thing to be affecting so many different parts of the body, as you were just saying, the joint pain and everything like that. You know, a lot of people wouldn't even think that that's got anything to do with fasting or how you eat necessarily.
That's right. And you know
Mm.
what? I've had clients, Sarah, who we finished. I usually work with people for a minimum of a year because it takes that much time to get in these habits, see the health improvements, deal with our mindset and, emotional eating and so forth. Um, I'm thinking of one client in particular after she reached all her goals and we stopped working together. And she came back 6 months later and she's like, you know what? I didn't think that fasting clean was so important. I started having flavored water and putting cream in my coffee. And she said her plantar fasciitis came back.
Wow.
So it's people think, oh, you're so strict about that clean fast. Well, maybe I'm strict about it because I want you to get all the health benefits. And anything that's taking the body's attention away from the deep healing that happens when we're actually in a fasted state, we don't want to do that. And the best of both worlds is you can save all those flavored things for your eating window. So I just feel like one of the things I say is that I know this seems too good to be true. You're like, all these
Mhm.
benefits, all this feeling good. That sounds like, how could it be true? It's true because it matches our physiology. I
Mm,
liken it to sleep. Most people are sleep deprived, but we don't go without it. And we also know how good we feel. Just imagine that good night's sleep. I don't know if you can remember the last time you had one, right? But that really waking up refreshed, how good that feels. We are designed to sleep. We are designed to heal our brain mostly when we're sleeping.
yeah.
And we are also designed to fast. And the reason fasting sounds too good to be true is because the body is like, thank God. It's like all the mechanisms that happen when we're in a fasted state. You're giving your body this gift. And then the benefit is you feel amazing and keep your doctor happy. So,
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is absolutely fascinating. And I feel like there are some people that I will be sharing all these benefits with because they might be able to improve their quality of life through this. So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us so far, but there's just a couple more things I have to ask. Our
okay.
practices and habits section. So is there a habit that you would recommend practicing in conjunction with this?
I think if people have blood sugar issues and feel like they're somewhat sedentary, that a habit to implement would be every time you eat, you walk. And it will
Mm,
become eat, walk, eat, walk. It'll feel strange. Like you'll finish your meal, you'll clean up the dishes. And if you don't do it, your body will start missing it. And even if it's a 10-minute walk, even if it's around the block, even if it's up and down a bunch of stairs, even if it's around your office, that even if it's on a treadmill, that you eat and walk is incredibly beneficial for our glucose, blood sugar control. And if people are reversing type 2 diabetes or have other blood sugar issues, most people do. I don't
mm,
know what the statistics are in Australia, but in the US, 97% of American adults are metabolically unhealthy. And you could become a person who is metabolically healthy. You could become the 3%, maybe you'd make it even 4%, um, by implementing a clean fasting schedule and implementing an eating window and walk after eating. You could become one of the rare people who is actually healthy.
wow. Yeah, that is fascinating. And so you mentioned that this practice is not necessarily good for pregnant women or people who are breastfeeding. Is there anybody else that you wouldn't recommend to try this?
No.
No,
Well,
that's it.
children and teenagers. And what we can
Mm,
teach are you would never want to put a child or even a teenager on a fasting schedule.
mm,
But what we can do is we can shift this cultural conversation, which is constant snacking. The
mm.
way to feel better, to appease my emotion or soothe myself, we are addicted to ultra processed food because it's designed by very smart people with PhDs to keep us addicted. So if we
Yes.
can train our children and our teens to know what actual hunger feels like. People are like, I'm starving all the time. No, that's a blood sugar roller coaster. You're actually not starving. And if we can gradually, you can have in your family that we eat breakfast at whatever time and we stop dinner at whatever time. You could call that intermittent fasting. It could be we stop dinner at 6 and we don't eat breakfast before 7. Okay, well, that could be a 13-hour fast. But we also want to train our young people and ourselves to know what actual hunger is and to wait for a meal. One of the, I think, most damaging, I call it medical mythology. Well, I'll say two. One would be that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It was an ad campaign made up 100 years ago by Kellogg's because they made breakfast cereal and they were trying to get people to eat it. Breakfast is not the most important meal of the day unless you like to eat in the morning. Then the other thing is this idea that we should be keeping our metabolism up with eating lots of little tiny snacks and meals throughout the day. Sure, that might keep our metabolism up, but we're eating too much. Okay. So if you can, again, become fat adapted by keeping an eating window and fasting clean, then you're burning your own body fat, which keeps the metabolism up if you're also eating nutritious food to satiety. So
Yeah,
I think that every human can learn what hunger actually is and to wait for the next meal.
absolutely.
And pregnant women and women who are breastfeeding can wait until they're not fueling another human.
Yeah.
But during that time, you can actually tune into, am I eating to soothe my emotions, or am I eating
Mm,
because I'm actually hungry? And
yeah.
if everybody asked that, we could really turn around some human health.
Mm. Well, that is absolutely fascinating. And I would like to move on now to our open mic section. This is your chance to talk about anything that you're passionate about. It doesn't really have to be related to what we've spoken about so far, unless you want it to be. So the floor is yours.
Oh gosh, I have just one note. The context for my life right now is that I can say about myself and the people who I touch and can work with me, that they can say, I'm a person who takes really good care of myself right now, no matter what's happening in life. And if I can spearhead a movement of human beings taking really good care of ourselves through the stressful times, through the joyful times, that it's always a priority for me and it's always a priority for you, that I include that phrase, that two words, right now, quite purposefully, because we relate to taking good care of ourselves as something we want to do later and that we will do later when life calms down or it's a better day or, I'm not on vacation or what have you. And it started with me keeping an eating window, which I have every day for almost 8 years. I've decided every day, when's my eating window today? So I would say, Sarah, that maybe I'm kind of boring and that I care so much about people feeling well and creating an empowering conversation and context for trusting ourselves and trusting our bodies, that I devote pretty much my whole life to that. And as I said before, I'm so lucky I help people around the world so I can be in any time zone. So
Yeah.
my great passion is exploring different cultures and being with people and eating their food. I just spent a month in Mexico City, and I've got to tell you, the food in Mexico City is next level, next level.
Yeah.
So I love hearing people's stories. I love hearing people's struggles. I love being connected to people. And that's how I spend my life.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, we have learnt so much from you today, and thank you so much for sharing everything. If our listeners or our audience want to find out more about you and your work, where should they go?
My business is called Fast Forward. And so it's fastforwardwellness.com or Fast Forward Wellness on Instagram. I don't have a
Mhm.
super strong Instagram presence because I spend all my time talking to people as opposed to creating Instagram posts
Yeah.
content. And I think that's probably a challenge for most people who are a solopreneur in business for themselves. It's like, how do I
Mm,
juggle this whole social media thing with my actual work?
yeah.
And so it's Fast Forward Wellness. I coach people one on one. I coach people in group classes, and I have a group membership. So my alumni, anyone who's worked with me, can stay in the membership and stay connected and stay coached by me over time.
Amazing.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Fast Forward. I think it's a good name, forward thinking.
Yeah. It makes sense. I feel like it's one of those. It's a rational name. It does what it says on the tin. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
we
exactly.
all,
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
we all know
Yeah.
what's happening in your business, and thank you for sharing about it. I'm sure our audience will go and have a look, and hopefully you'll be able to work with some of them because it just
Oh,
sounds like
thrilled.
amazing work what you're doing, and just that focus of making people feel better. I feel like I personally really appreciate that. I think it's a perfect focus to have, and one that sometimes gets lost in other businesses where it's all about the money or all about the business. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, I do
Yeah.
have to earn a living for
Of
sure. And,
course.
I want to make a clarification that I do work with women and men.
Mhm.
When men want to work with me, it's in a one-on-one scenario. So all my group programs are for women only.
Okay.
That evolved. I started coaching men and women in a group, and it just felt like it worked better to have women only only in my group programs, but I do help a lot of men one-on-one, particularly those who have had an important or urgent diagnosis that they want to see turn that around. So I do love working with both men and women, but men would be one-on-one. And
okay.
yeah, I love every minute of it.
Well, that's good to know. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I know I've learned a lot and you've given us a lot of information to think about. So thank you. I hope our audience has enjoyed it as well. And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Sarah.
You have been listening to Aging Less, the Longevity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at longevity.lifemanagementsciencelabs.com, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.